Hey everyone, today I'm making a video in response to an article that's been going around about two brothers who hoarded a bunch of hand sanitizer with the intention of reselling it at a higher price. When I say brothers, they weren't black, they were white, they were literal brothers, they were white, literal brothers, if that's important. But there's been like a variety of responses to it. I think my take is generally kind of predictable because, the libertarian standpoint is there's really nothing wrong with this. But you have a lot of people who, will say things like, I love the free market, but, oh, I'm normally very libertarian, but, and the word that they use to demonize this practice is price gouging. I maintain that this is an invalid concept. This is an arbitrary garbage concept, and it's just designed to demonize a practice that's actually ethically permissible. But what's revealed is that when people believe they have the moral high ground, they're willing to cheer on the government as it just strong arm robs people. And then these people are going to turn around and condemn what these brothers did when they're actually celebrating the government forcing them to donate to charity. That's literally the specific headline I found words it just that stupidly. But there's two concepts that really go unchallenged because they come off as quite innocuous. I argue they're essentially based in Marxist rhetoric, and those two concepts are price gouging and market failure. I'm sure if I really thought about it, there's all kinds of other concepts like that. Which, if there's anything like that comes to your mind, definitely leave that in the comments, and that might be something worth expanding upon later. But those are the two I want to focus on now, is there's this concept of quote-unquote market failure and on quote-unquote price gouging. And the common thread between the two is that they're based in entitlement, and it's essentially an arbitrary entitlement. With price gouging, you feel that you are entitled to a specific price regardless of the situation, regardless of the availability, regardless of the risks taken by the parties involved, just regardless of so many factors of reality that all go in to determine what is a price. You feel entitled to the price that you're accustomed to, therefore if it gets too arbitrarily high, then it's price gouging. And if you go state to state, all of their definitions of this are completely different. Some say, if it's 10% above what the rest of the market's doing, that's price gouging. Others might have a higher or a lower standard, and it's a completely just emotional response to things. And it's based in a very childish entitlement mentality. The same thing goes for market failure. There's really no such thing. There's no standard by which you get to say, the market failed. Now, price gouging is actually generally kind of a good thing. Because it allows for the supply chains to stock things appropriately. A lot of people talk about, setting limits. This customer can only buy so many things. But one way to regulate this would be through increasing prices when the demand for those goods goes up. Because companies, in order to stock these things or to buy extra, if they can only do it at the same regular price, there's nothing in it for them, and they have to take all that risk. And you don't always know for certain that all of these things are actually going to be truly necessities, right? There's a category of buying things which is, just in case buying things, right? And if you increase the price of things, you cut this down a little bit. And what it does is it helps make sure that people don't go crazy and buy tons and tons of all these things, or go up to multiple different stores and take as much as they possibly can. What we're seeing with all these shortages is a direct cause of price gouging. And this happens every single time there's a crisis like this. It happens again and again and again. And people never learn their lesson because it's just not very emotionally convenient to really sit down and think about whether or not price gouging is acceptable. And I argue that it is. Now, when these brothers bought all this hand sanitizer, what do you suppose happens if everything blows over and then they can't resell it, or they have to resell it at basically the same price they bought it at, and then they're just out, all of that time and effort to gather it all up? That's called risk. They did, in fact, take a risk. there's a very leftist mentality, which is that people who just buy things and resell them, people who just invest, people who just like give out a loan, people who just like whatever it might be, the quote unquote capitalist class, that they've done nothing. But in reality, they've taken a risk. And if things don't work out as planned, then the person who took the risk is out their investment. But this is a part of the reality that they can't ever see, because they only see the capitalist when the capitalist succeeds. They never see, the people who attempt these things and then fail. Those victims are invisible to them. So they anticipated that there would be a demand for this hand sanitizer products. They gathered them all up, and then they were selling them at a higher price. You are free to not buy them at that price. People are talking about, they're trying to create a monopoly, and it's absolutely ridiculous. 17,000 bottles of hand sanitizer is kind of a drop in the bucket in terms of the overall scale of things. But even so, if they're literally capable of buying up all the hand sanitizer, well, maybe if there weren't any price gouging laws, the stores could catch on to this, raise their own prices, and then you'd have a little bit more of an equilibrium. So there's all these mechanisms in place that can help solve these problems of so-called market failure, but we're not allowed to see them. And now we're stuck with all these like dumb socialist Bernie bros who look at shelves depleting under socialist, communist America, under communist price gouging laws, and they say, wow, it looks like capitalism failed, when this is a direct result of their policies. And it's because they never want to take responsibility for the things they advocate for. It's always more, more, more. They always find some new scapegoat in capitalism and some new thing to tinker with and to regulate to justify their insanity. It's absolute, it's power-driven insanity, and there's no redeeming qualities in it whatsoever. I can't condemn it any more harshly. So I'm going to read some of these comments and make fun of them a little bit. I found a kind of a peculiar article from, it was like a Catholic theologian's approach to price gouging, and I found it just very, very fascinating and very cancerous. So in a nutshell, this story is they hoard up a bunch of hand sanitizer with the intent of reselling it based on their anticipation of how the market is going to go. In other words, they take a risk and they're going to try to profit from it, which is going to actually help the market in the broader scale to reallocate resources properly. But of course, the government has to freak out over it. The Attorney General tracks them down and bullies them and basically says, you can either give this to charity or we're going to confiscate it. So this is why this headline is completely dumb. You can't force someone to donate to charity. This commentator is reacting to other comments in the thread celebrating this and gloating over it, saying, why is someone having their property stolen from them a good thing? Someone responds, because it is an unethical way and you get jail for less than that in other not-so-free countries. Pandemics are a bitch. Profit from stock markets, not from physically hoarding the asked products. And then another commentator responds, it was done in lieu of charging him tens of thousands of dollars in fines. Price gouging is illegal during national emergencies, you retard. Well, these two responses are completely retarded. Both of them commit the same fallacy based in the thought-terminating cliche of saying, hey, if there's a law, it's therefore moral. You'll notice that none of these people, they're not going to explicate any kind of ethical or moral principle to justify it. They're just reacting emotionally. They're emotionally disgusted by this because they think, how dare you profit off of people's fears and profit off of this thing? When in reality, that's kind of exactly what all the stores are doing. Like they by selling the products, right? Why shouldn't all stores just be required to give everything away for free? I mean, there's an emergency, right? And fuck any negative externalities of that because we're just engaged in childish wishful thinking. So, if it's moral for a store to sell the products at the rate that they generally do, well, if there's higher demand, that normally affects price, and therefore there's absolutely no reason that a national emergency wouldn't morally and ethically result in the increased price. So if you justify any price, you justify every price. It's just common sense. The real arbiter should be, are you willing to pay for it? There's always, an opportunity for the person buying to voluntarily choose or not choose to take that offer. And this is why this remains in the realm of the ethically permissible. Certainly you can make an argument that it may be morally preferable to buy up all the hand sanitizer and then say, all right, now I'm going to donate this to a charity that I trust to distribute this based upon the needs of people who might not have the means to procure these items normally. And that would be a really good free market charitable thing to do. That would be a morally good thing to do. However, it's not ethically binding. This is why I make such a huge stink over the ethics and morality distinction, because it's incredibly useful. They can do a morally good thing of their own volition. If you compel them to do it, it's not really moral, it's just coercion. The gang rape that is democracy. But basically, both of these arguments can be reduced to, how dare you complain that we're beating you, we could have murdered you. And this just reflects the simple, just primordial, just absolutely basic, low IQ kind of response that statists have to emotional inconveniences that they then misconstrue as unethical, and then therefore use as part of a threat narrative to justify their own just barbarism and savagery. This woman, whose name was just so long and girthy that I had to censor it by drawing a penis, which is kind of ironic, she has this to contribute to the conversation. It's not a problem until you try to sell a sample-sized bottle for $70, lol. Now, obviously, she's not really taking this very seriously, but what this highlights is the arbitrary nature of rules against price gouging. What kind of sample size bottle? Is it a 3-ounce bottle? Is it a 5-ounce bottle? $70. What about 60? What about 50? What about 40? Where's the line here, right? And people who are in favor of these laws, they can't answer these questions in any objective way. I can say whatever people are willing to pay for it, there you go. If you find someone who's dumb enough to pay an exorbitantly high price for something that's not of that value, well, that person's hard to find. There's not a lot of those buyers out there. If you have a price that's a lot lower, you're going to sell out a lot faster, and then you're going to have your money faster, right? And it's all a question of, what is your time worth to you? What is your effort worth to you? And if you're someone who really wants to squeeze every single conceivable possible dollar out of the value of the things you have, you can go and seek out literally the dumbest people ever and then overcharge them. And if they're willing to pay it, then guess what? To those people, it was worth it to them. And it's as simple as that. The first rule of prepping is you do not talk about your prepping. Which I included this because I guess that's fair enough advice, but as an argument here, and given the context, it's being presented as a way to blame the victim, right? So these are two separate issues. Sure, from a pragmatic standpoint, don't tell anyone about your prepping because, just violent socialist idiots are gonna mug you, or the government's gonna steal from you, and then just subhuman morons are going to celebrate it. So yeah, don't share your prepping. That's a good idea. That's a good rule of thumb. This person writes, satisfying karma. I don't think it's very good karma to celebrate others' misfortune, and particularly not when they haven't really done anything wrong. I love capitalism and all, but hoarders should be sunk to the bottom of the sea. You're a goddamn pirate or something. And this back and forth, I'm not even going to read it, but basically, this is one woman, a based and red-pilled black woman explaining to a dumb white bitch that you can't consent to things under duress. This very basic concept that this dumb whore just doesn't understand. So I'll leave this up on the screen. I'm talking for roughly 30 seconds here, so if you want to read through this back and forth, there it is, but that's basically it in a nutshell. Is this dumb bitch doesn't understand that if the government like holds a gun to your head and gives you an ultimatum, that's not consent, and like somehow she's literally so stupid that she needs this like spoon fed to her. All right, those are all the ones I can stand, and honestly I feel like I'm kind of beating a dead horse on this one, so I'm just gonna wrap this up here. That Catholic article I mentioned, I think I'm gonna save that for a stream. So there we go. I noticed on my last video, I had a lot of very nice comments, which I appreciate a lot. Thank you very much. And I'm glad people are, giving me positive feedback for some of these videos. Because of course, any engagement is something that I celebrate on the channel. One thing I do like to note though is if you're gonna write me a comment, could you please also like the video if you like the video? Because like I'm sitting there like, video has 3 likes and like 7 comments, and all the comments are very nice comments. So I'm like, why aren't you fuckers liking the video? Like, if you clearly liked it enough to write a comment that was nice, like, fucking like the video. I'm a baby channel. Literally every single like makes a big difference proportionally, and I appreciate them. Also, I'm very, very close to 500 subscribers, so any likes, shares, and subscribes I appreciate very much. If it's something that that you're happy to share, obviously. Anyway, I'm not gonna make a habit of doing the whole YouTuber bullshit like share and subscribe thing, but I thought it was worth just kind of throwing out here as a reminder or something. I don't know. All right, everybody, have a nice day.